On the evening of July 23, 2010, tragedy struck in the sleepy town of Independence, Louisiana. Jamin Robinson, who was 22 years old, was found unconscious by the side of the road. He died 2 days later despite the medical staff's frantic efforts. Detectives were left without any leads or suspects for years, and this left the neighborhood in a state of anxiety. Many years later, a mysterious witness, however, suddenly came forward with information that altered everything, just as all hope seemed to be lost. What information did this witness possess, and how did it affect how the investigation was conducted? Hello and welcome back to Mystery Detective, the channel where we investigate sinister mysteries relating to both solved and unsolved cold cases worldwide. Stay with us as we explore this mystery, which was finally solved after 13 protracted years. A small Louisiana town called Independence, which is about an hour's drive north of New Orleans, is home to a number of historic sites. It is a close-knit community with just over 1,600 residents that values its rich history and Southern hospitality. The community is well known for its yearly Sicilian Festival, which honors the Sicilian heritage of many of its citizens. Tourists who want to experience Louisiana's distinctive culture and history frequent the town as well. Our case today starts in this tiny, peaceful town named Independence. On March 31, 1989, Jamin Robinson was born in Independence, Louisiana. The only thing that is known for sure about Jamin's early years is that he had a sister named Chastity Jackson. Very little is known about Jamin's formative years. Also, information, like the names of his parents or the schools he attended, are still unknown. Despite the fact that little was known about Jamin, he and his sister were known to have had a unique bond that was unbreakable. They both counted on one another for love, support, and comfort as they grew up gradually in Independence. Their bond soon grew stronger with time. According to those who knew Jamin, he was a sweet young man who was always beaming with happiness and spreading kindness wherever he went. His contagious smile and kind heart made an impression on everyone who came into contact with him. He was adored by his family and friends due to his kind nature and quiet demeanor. He also had a strong love for his family, who he cherished deeply. Jamin, however, was more complex than just a good-hearted person. He had a talent for drawing and was a gifted artist. His drawings showed off his creative prowess and ability to capture the beauty and life of the world around him. Jamin was also an active participant in his church community, giving his time and resources on a regular basis to help those in need. In addition to this, Jamin had a close friend named Montre Page. Jamin and Montre went to the same school and shared a neighborhood. The family of Jamin was also familiar with his friend, Montre. The duo got along well despite Jamin being 4 years older. Jamin's days were without a doubt full of joy, love, and limitless possibilities. He had a full, promising life ahead of him, and his plans and aspirations appeared to be quickly coming true. But just when they didn't expect it, things started to go south. For Jamin Robinson, July 23, 2010, began as any other day, totally unaware of his impending fate. He got out of bed and began his morning routine. Little did he know that as he went about his regular business of running errands and attending to duties, he was completing a series of actions that would ultimately result in his untimely death. He most likely would have chosen to spend the entire day inside his house rather than outside, if he had known what was going to happen. On the night of that same day, just before 11 o'clock, the Independence Police Department received an emergency call. According to the panicked caller, someone was reportedly found unconscious on Kemp Street near a roadside ditch. Although the caller urged the police to act quickly, It was unclear how long the person had been lying there. The on-duty police officers immediately sprung into action and sped as quickly as they could to the scene. The police were met by a terrifying sight when they arrived on the scene. Near a roadside ditch, a young man who was barely holding on to life lay motionless, despite the fact that he had no obvious physical wounds or blood on him. It was obvious that he was in a terrible shape. The officers' thoughts began to run through their minds as they attempted to determine what might have happened to him. As there were no other indications of criminal activity in the area, they started to believe that the young man had been the victim of a hit-and-run driver. At that point, the police knew they had to act quickly to save his life because they didn't have much time. In the hopes that he would arrive at the hospital in time, they carefully loaded the young man into an awaiting ambulance with the aid of paramedics. They hurried to the Lolly-Kemp Regional Medical Center while the sirens wailed. As soon as the young man got to the hospital, the medical staff stabilized him and evaluated his condition. The news regarding his health was not a good one. According to the doctors, he had multiple head wounds, and his survival was in jeopardy. After realizing the seriousness of his condition, the doctors transferred the young man to St. Tammany Medical Center, one of the best hospitals in Louisiana. As the young man was being treated by the doctors and nurses, new details about him started to emerge. Surprisingly, Jamin Robinson was the person found, almost dead at the roadside. As soon as detectives learned of his identity, his family members were informed, and they immediately traveled to the hospital to be by his side, their hearts heaving with fear and distress. Although they prayed and hoped for a miracle, as the hours passed, their worst fears came true. The doctors quickly prepared Jamin for surgery because of his critical condition. Jamin's recovery was slow and unsure despite the surgery's success. In order to provide him with the best care possible, the medical staff chose to transfer him to the New Orleans University Hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Jamin's health kept getting worse, and his family's hope started to dwindle. Although they clung to every last bit of hope, they knew deep down that they were in for a terrible fate. Jamin lost the battle on July 25, 2010. Just 2 days after he was found along the road. His family was inconsolable. They found it hard to comprehend how tragically and abruptly he had been taken from them. The next day, after Jamin passed away, the Tangipahoa Parish Coroner's Office fixed a time for an autopsy to determine the cause of his fatal wounds. According to the examiner's findings, Jamin's death was caused by internal closed head injuries. The injuries also indicated that the car which hit him may have been moving slowly. This further complicated the situation. The quiet town of Independence was enveloped in a pall of sadness and confusion that fateful night as word of Jamin's tragic death spread. The Independence Police Department's detectives launched a thorough investigation into the incident right away. They were committed to solving the mysteries surrounding Jamin's tragic passing. In an effort to uncover the truth, they started to painstakingly piece together everything that happened on that terrible night. The detectives were faced with a challenging task and unsure of where to begin. Jamin was possibly hit by a careless driver who left him for dead by the side of the road. Who was that person? What, specifically, had happened to Jamin that evening if it wasn't a hit-and-run incident? The detectives are burdened by these and many other questions. Detectives made an important finding as they looked into Jamin's death. It happened that Jamin's friend and neighbor, Montre, was the one who had discovered Jamin lying by the side of the road. As soon as this information came to light, the police turned to Montre for clarification, hoping that his version of events would shed light on the actual events of that evening. The police were still no closer to cracking the case. Even after several rounds of interrogation with him, Jamin was buried shortly after. Many of his friends and loved ones came to the funeral. The investigation into Jamin's death persisted with new energy. Authorities even appealed to the general populace for assistance, pleading with anyone with information in the country to come forward. Each anniversary of his passing brought fresh sorrow, and the need for justice continued to be strong. Unfortunately, there were no real leads from the investigation, and the case eventually went cold for some years. The investigation resumed sometime in 2017. But with regard to Jamin Robinson's case, the Independence Police Department once more came to a standstill. They were aware that they needed assistance in making progress in the case because they had few resources and no leads. Out of desperation, they soon turned to the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office for help. The Sheriff's Office then intervened, bringing their knowledge to bear in an effort to solve the puzzle surrounding Jamin's tragic death. Detective Mike Sticker assumed control of the investigation around this time and started diligently assisting Independence Police Chief Frank Edwards. The two men and a number of other detectives pored over the case's information for hours on end, searching for any fresh leads that might lead to Jamin's justice. They once again turned to the public for assistance because they thought that the community held the key to solving the case. Particularly, Detective Frank was still holding out hope that someone would come forward as a result of hearing about the case being covered by the media. The breakthrough in Jamin's case came 6 long years later, in January 2023, when a mysterious witness came forward and revealed himself while maintaining anonymity. The witness felt compelled to confess after carrying a great deal of guilt for a long time. His account completely changed the course of the investigation and was nothing short of dumbfounding. The witness claimed that Jamin's death had actually been brought on by someone who knew him, rather than the hit-and-run driver that had been initially suspected. Police were informed by the suspect that Jamin's friend, Montree, was the murderer. Detectives have not yet revealed all the specifics of the witness's account, but they have finally made clear how serious Montree's actions were. Detectives then started looking for him. On February 10, 2023, police finally made an arrest after tracking his whereabouts to Chambers County, Texas. Authorities decided to charge him as an adult up until 3 years ago, despite the fact that he was only 17 at the time of Jamin's death. According to Jimmy Travis, a sheriff of Tangipahoa Parish, once a person reaches the age of 17, they are considered an adult offender in the state of Louisiana. Second-degree murder, numerous counts of failure to appear in court, and 1 count of jumping bail were all brought against Montree in court. As it turned out, Montree's legal issues appeared to have begun much earlier than when he was named a suspect in Jamin's killing. Back in November 16, 2021, he had previously been detained and had admitted guilt to several drug-related charges. He was required to wear an ankle monitor at the time and show up again for sentencing on November 19. Montree chose to flee to Chambers County, Texas, in defiance of the court's order, and he also forcibly cut off his ankle monitor. The community was shocked to learn of Montree's arrest for the murder of Jamin, especially Jamin's bereaved family. They initially found it hard to believe that their son's best friend was to blame for his tragic death. But as reality set in, a sense of relief overcame them. The rest of the neighborhood also had a difficult time accepting the case's actual facts. People were shocked by the betrayal and questioned how something so disheartening could occur between 2 friends. There were many who were left with unanswered questions and unease. But most importantly, there was a general expectation that this would provide resolution for all parties involved. Montree pleaded guilty to several charges in the drug-related case on February 27, 2023, and was given a 90-year prison term. He is currently awaiting trial for Jamin's murder as well. Jamin's death was finally solved after a protracted investigation thanks to the persistence of law enforcement and the bravery of a witness who came forward. Jamin's family and the surrounding area can now find closure and start the healing process, even though nothing can bring Jamin back. What do you think would have happened if the witness hadn't come forward to reveal that Jamin was actually not a victim of a hit and run and was murdered by his friend Montri? Please share your opinions with us in the comments. For more crime stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, my friends, stay safe and vigilant for the next mystery to be solved.